So today I'm going over the new investment idea phase and the cycles I go through with a new investing idea, and that I've sort of caught on to myself having as I've felt the experience more and more as I've become more experienced. And so what it is for me is that whenever a new idea pops up, particularly ones where I think it's going to be a good opportunity, asymmetric risk reward, and the initial feeling that I normally get is that I'm very optimistic, very positive about the idea, and I see all the benefits and all the drivers up the upside. So it could be undervalued, it could be the growth, it could be the expansion internationally, it could be it's booming on social media. There's many reasons, and that's generally sort of the first phase when you generally just see the upside. The you do acknowledge the downside, but generally quite an optimistic tone. You don't really know that much yet, but you just know that initially it seems like a good deal based on a few factors that you got noted down. And then the second phase for me is when you start sort of digging and learning more about the company. You realize, oh, actually certain things aren't as good as you thought, and that the there are some potential red flags, or it could be weaknesses or things that just weren't as good as you initially thought. And then it sort of becomes a bit suppressed in that sense, where you usually had very high expectations here, somewhat become suppressed and perhaps too suppressed. And then generally what I notice is after I've gone through that first period, that first phase, and then that second phase where it's become a bit more suppressed, I'm a bit overly focused on the negatives and the risk factors and so forth, I then generally start to like taper off into what I think is the true, or what I think is my actual perception of where I think this company's going long term. Now, obviously, if it turns out actually there's a lot of things that aren't really that good with the company, you've got a controlling shareholder who doesn't respect minority shareholder rights, then obviously that's probably going to continue going down. But generally, it starts to gradually return to where you ultimately, or where I ultimately see it level off in terms of where I believe in the company will go over time. But equally, it could just be that actually I've acknowledged those risks, and this is more than not what happens to me a lot of the time is actually I've acknowledged those risks. Perhaps I'm still not a fan of the fact that they've basically almost maxed out their market share, and that yes, they had some one-time benefits last year, so that made their growth slightly higher than it normally. So I've revised my expectations a bit, but generally overall, I still think this is a good deal because of X, Y, Z. So I'm sort of coming back to that baseline. And again, the baseline could be up here where actually, no, it's still a really good deal, even when considering those factors, or it could just be even when considering both things. Actually, it's not really that good of a deal. There's a lot of risk, and it's not worth the return involved. So that also sort of leads me on to why I like to average in over time, over given months. Before I used to just sort of, once I hit a price that I thought was attractive, I'd just build a position immediately. Now I like to average in over months, because I really get to start to understand the company at a deeper level. And I feel like I get a more refined perspective over time. I think it's sort of the reasoning why Monish Pabrai, a famous investor who runs just under $1 billion of capital in his fund, he often says that you really only start to understand the business when you own it, and particularly when that company stock price has dropped 50%. So I think I can see what he means there, in the sense that you really start, the longer you own it in particular, you really start to understand what the strengths and weaknesses are. And when you're down 50% and you're assessing whether this was the right decision or not, I think that's what he means as well. In terms of what you start to really understand it, and potentially where you've messed up, or actually, no, this is a golden opportunity and it's time to go further. So they're overall my thoughts, and that's also why I like to average in over a long period of time. Hope you found it useful. Let me know what you guys have found as well over time. Thanks.